came here. Yes, so nobody basically came here for any other reason, but you came here basically because of excellence. If you know our university, and I think some of you will even know that better than me now, because you probably look at rankings, your friends across the world talk to you. So the universities are at the helm of basically what they are doing. So it's very competitive. Academic careers are now very competitive, much more than any other time before. But the fact that you are here by excellence, you fit into that competitiveness. And the products that we have been seeing, I'm still in touch with quite a few of ANSHK members in Canada, in the UK, in Australia, in the US. Quite a few of them, actually, we have maintained good connection. So that shows how competitive they have been in basically getting into those positions. Now, careers in terms of academia are becoming, much more international. So people do not just necessarily stick into one place, but there are opportunities, to move on and basically to find what we think are greener places, to launch or proceed with your career. I have also to mention that we have, opportunities for international mobility. I'm sure how many of those universities, I mean, some of your universities should have, but I am very much sure that our university and Hong Kong University, and I think to some extent UST, they have international mobilities right from the PhD level. So I normally encourage almost all of my PhD students to basically go out of Hong Kong, maybe for 6 months, some of them for 1 year. And you basically also get involved with some other people, maybe similar research or something that you want to pick up at a later stage. Now, when we do that aspect and you are heading towards either writing up, a PhD thesis or maybe a research, document, or you are finalizing your, academic sojourn, maybe in Hong Kong, people look at research performance. So academic performance, research for performance. I thought if I'm going to talk, I will so much concentrate on the initial stages of research, but with the caliber of speakers today, I think I will not mention that, that's fine. But research performance is very important. And it comes into an inverted triangle. So an inverted triangle. So the bottom is narrow and on top of it is basically broad. In what sense? In the sense that when you start a PhD degree, or whatever in academic career, in many cases you follow your task. And I say your task because sometimes we take topics because we are very much interested. Sometimes we take topics because the supervisor has the funding and he wants somebody to do that research. So that's basically, what we do. But in doing so, we actually start to work on theories and concepts and identify a framework that we will be able to use. Again, that's into research. But in the beginning, or maybe towards the end of your PhD study, I think it's very important to get a paper out. Of course, some have written papers before even arrival. I think that is also taken into consideration. But at the bottom of the triangle, it's you, it's yourself. So that is when people write papers. Sometimes you write as an individual, sometimes you write with your supervisor, and you move on. But as you move on with academic mobility, going in, meeting people, doing conferences, talking to other people, then you start the art of collaboration. Now, self-indulgence in research and collaboration are equally very important, and it will show by the time you start going on top of the ladder, in academia. So collaboration is really very, very important. So as an individual, if you're at the beginning, now we have a little bit of low-ranking journals people can write. I also encourage people to do. We also have open access. Sometimes open access, quite a few of them charge a little bit of money. Some really, I just got a collaborator yesterday, and he's putting our paper on an open access, but they charge like $4,000 US. I mean, that's horrible. If it's my research, personally, I will not do that. I don't need it. But in any case, so you move on to make a point to assessors, to academia, to the university, that you are capable also of doing some work as an individual, or sometimes with two people. As you move on with collaboration, you are getting people who are basically working with you. You can also remember, or maybe you will know, that journals like Nature, like Lancet, and all that, they will rarely publish an article from a single author. So that is not well enough. I mean, basically they will publish one or two in 1 year or so, but that is a very much renowned single author. So collaboration is very important. You can see a Nature article with 10 people, 15 people, even 20, sometimes. One of my PhD students just got one, and they were like 35 people listed on a 5-page paper, and they claim credit. Everybody claims credit. As we move on towards the end of writing or doing a PhD, you get into postdocs, or you complete the PhDs, or sometimes you get into early career, right? So these days we have early career that is basically, well paid attention to. In Hong Kong, they basically get a lot of money. If you are also successful in applying for grants, early career, actually the form is different. So if you are early, in our own time, we never had that opportunity. I mean, you just go in, with gray hair career people, and you as an early career, and you just try your luck. So early career is very important. Now, sometimes people will also start talking, oh, you are looking for an academic job, maybe in Hong Kong, maybe elsewhere. Sometimes I have to say that a few universities require skills. So not only the paper that you have, you have written, or the articles you have written, but what are those 21st century skills that you can prove? And that is basically where your CV comes in handy. And also that is where, what you have done with probably your supervisor and collaborators, will also note. So we have what we call infotective, right? So infotective, you are familiar, with a few, you are familiar with a few softwares that basically allows you to be an investigator. An infotective personnel is someone who has capacity to identify, to ask questions, to analyze, to get data. So that's basically what we do. As a 21st century skills needing in societies, of course, collaboration is one, content identification is another one, innovation, and of course, information technology, which many of you are actually better than me, in that sense. The culture of achievement is also one. What have you achieved? Who have you collaborated with? What have you done outside the content of your academia? So that also can basically be reflected in your CV, and that is, essentially, what people are looking for. We also have what we call homophily, and that is simply meaning, so you go to a conference, both of you are early careers, PhDs, and you get connected right from there, and that builds up. I have to tell you that, one of my first conferences in the year 2000 got me involved with some two very good academics that are very much at the top of their stage, at the moment. We just met on a conference and we became friends, since then. So again, I'm aware with the time, and I'm sorry if I have taken away quite a few of your time, but I'm happy to be here. I will still be here for another few minutes, before I move on to my other appointment. I have a group of people from Griffith University in Australia who are visiting, so I'm taking care of those. But I can answer questions, or you can give me some points, to go and think, and then when I meet you again another time, we will be able to discuss further. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your time and the really insightful words you've given us concerning research. At the moment, I'm not sure we have any questions right now, but should we get any, we're going to route them to you through the president, and then we make sure to get the response perhaps we were asked. Thank you very much, sir. So we are going to move right on with the social sciences session. Please let's remember to keep to time. And also, while the sessions are on, we can actually drop our questions in the box, that's in chat box, that is. So, and then every question will be addressed, at the same time during the Q&A that comes after each session. So over to you, Mr. Abdul-Ghaffar. You can invite your session presenters. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Professor, for this wonderful talk. It's so inspiring and amazing. Thank you so much. Moving from where I stopped earlier, so I'll be calling on the speaker. The first speaker on the list is the person of Mr. Emmanuel Onwujekwe. I hope I got that one correctly. To present his paper. Thank you. Mr. Emmanuel.
We can't hear you. Do you mind unmuting yourself? We can't hear you. Do you mind unmuting?
Mr. Emmanuel, can you hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, it's fine now. Yeah. It's fine now. Yes.
Yes, please.
All right.
A second before you start, Mr. Emmanuel, you have 7 minutes, so I will interrupt when it's 30 minutes to the time.
All right. Okay? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you, organizers of this event. All right. Speaking on the topic, biodegradation and impact of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in the environment. All right. So here is my presentation outline. Well, the environment is witnessing significant pollution arising due to industrialization and other activities of man. Well, below is shown a figure of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon emissions from industries, which goes into the atmosphere. And we know that these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are ubiquitous contaminants in nature, with over 100 of them having been identified. And there are about 60 of them that have been identified by United States Environmental Protection Agency as priority contaminants. The prototypic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, such as naphthalene, anthracene, and phenolphthalein, usually serve as indicator compounds for the presence of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in the environment. We have different sources of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which could be from natural sources or anthropogenic sources. The natural sources are usually derived from volcanic eruptions or hydrothermal processes. Then we have the anthropogenic sources, which could come from agricultural sources, domestic sources, and industrial sources. These anthropogenic sources can as well be petrogenic or pyrolytic. Our methodology: to ensure systematic collection and presentation of data, the authors gather literatures from works published in reputable journals, indexed in Scopus and Web of Science. Here are the summary of our findings. It has been noted that polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons can be found as pollutants in air, sediment, soil, and aquatic environment, as well as surface and underground waters. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons at increased concentrations in the environment become toxic to aquatic plants, animal, microbial, and other life forms. And the main routes of this polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon exposure in humans is breathing, ambient air, and then indoor air, active and passive smoking, and consumption of meals containing polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Humans may also be exposed to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in their workplaces with observable symptoms such as irritation of the eyes, confusion, vomiting, and nausea. Ingestion of high concentration of naphthalene can as well cause hemolysis. Right? Here we can see the pathway. We have a pathway. We have a pathway for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon exposure in the environment, how the organism gets these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons ingested in their system, either from water, food, and other sources, which actually are being entered the system and will be metabolized. And you can see the action where the enzyme cytochrome P450 usually acts on these contaminants, and then the effects that now follows. Then, bacteria have been found as the principal microorganisms involved in the detoxification of toxic compounds. The mineralization of hydrocarbons essentially takes place in the presence of oxygen. Usually, most frequent aerobic degrading microbes are established in bacterial and fungal populations, and this can be achieved through bioremediation, either using bioaugmentation or biostimulation processes. However, there are two major pathways that could be effectively utilized by microorganisms in the degradation of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are growth and co-metabolism. The growth pathway primarily involves the utilization of organic pollutants as a source of carbon and energy. Meanwhile, co-metabolism is a means of transmission of organic pollutants by microorganisms without nutritional benefit in the presence of a growth substrate. Bacteria involved in mineralization of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons include Pseudomonas, Mycobacterium, and Rhodococcus species. The fungal utilization of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are facilitated by non-lignolytic and lignolytic fungi, as we can see in Figure 4. The lignolytic fungi has the ability to produce enzymes such as lignin peroxidase and versatile peroxidase to degrade lignin in wood. In conclusion, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are harmful in the environment because of their toxic nature and the time it takes prior to biodegradation. And here is our recommendation. Bioremediation strategies should always be employed in the remediation of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons polluted environments, and the use of eco-friendly technologies rather than means that introduces polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons in the environment would be helpful in drastically reducing concentration of pollutants in the environment. Here are some of the figures that was quoted earlier. All right, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel.
All right.
Kindly wait to the end of this session for any question that might be available for you.
All right.
Okay.
So,
once again, to the audience, kindly use the chat box to drop any message or any question you have for the speakers. So moving next to the next speaker, in person of Mr. Badamasi Ayodele. Are you here? You can share your screen now.
Mr. Emmanuel, can you please stop sharing?
okay. I've done that.
Okay, Mr. Badamasi, okay. Once again, you have 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll interrupt.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Francis Gwaramusi Ayodele from Gofreko University, Enugu, Nigeria. I'm really excited to actually share with you my research on biofilm inhibition using probiotics. And the topic of the title of my topic of my presentation is inhibition of biofilm formation in clinical isolate of Staphylococcus aureus by Lactobacillus species from soured milk. And here is my outline for today's presentation. All right, it is actually visible to the blind and audible to the deaf that there is a problem in the environment. How do I mean? Biofilms, which are actually complex microbial population, they shielded a kind of extracellular polymeric substances, which have actually become a significant concern in this 21st century, and particularly in persistent infections and also on medical equipment. So basically, one of the specific challenges that we have is biofilm forming Staphylococcus aureus, and they've actually shown a lot of resistance towards therapeutic potentials and therapeutic interventions of antibiotics and so on and so forth, which actually necessitates us to actually have a kind of new development, a new strategy of how to annihilate the growth of these pathogens, as they have been one of the most important and very, very detrimental issue to the environment, especially in the hospitals. So basically, the objective of this particular, before I go to the objective, I would like to show you a picture of how they form their biofilm. So they just come in one in one. Mind you, when we talk about biofilm, we have single colony biofilm and also multiple biofilm colony. So this particular one is talking about Staphylococcus aureus, trying to actually come together and form a quorum. Once they form this quorum, they adhere to the tissue of the body cells or probably medical equipment, and before you know it, they are always very hard to actually take off, especially by antibiotics, no matter what. And that's why we have an example of vancomycin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, we have methicillin-resistant, and so on and so forth. So in short, they've actually developed a high level of resistance and recalcitrancy against antibiotics. And that is why this particular research is on, just to make sure we use the probiotics to annihilate their growth. Okay, so the objective of this particular experiment that we did, I isolated Staphylococcus aureus from clinical samples. The samples were gotten from Itukwuozala, UNTH, and some other private hospitals. Then also in this objective too, we determined the biofilm forming ability of this isolated Staph aureus. And also we isolated lactic acid bacteria from Nunu milk and also dried milk. Then we determined the probiotic antibiofilm potential of this Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, the methodology improper. To achieve this objective, I employed the methodology that involved the extraction of probiotic bacteria from soured milk. So then I tested the biofilm inhibition activities of this probiotic on Staphylococcus aureus biofilm using both entire cells and also the self-resopanatants. Just to make sure I have a kind of comprehensive analysis, I compared the biofilm inhibition's activity of these probiotic strains. That's against selected pathogenic lactic acid bacteria. Okay, so this is the result I actually come first afterwards. All these 4 bacteria that I got at the end, after molecular characterization, I got to know that the 4 bacteria that were gotten that show biofilm inhibition of Staphylococcus aureus biofilm are Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus fusiformis, Bacillus avi, and Bacillus sciensis. So the significant differences were observed in the biofilm inhibition activity among the probiotics. But interestingly, do you believe that the biofilm inhibition activity of these probiotics strains actually compare favorable, data with that of the selected pathogenic lactic acid bacteria with no discernible difference? Just from the statistics we can have here, the lactobacillus, lab L, lab G, lab P, and lab M are actually the organism I called earlier. Just because of time, I might not go so depth more into that. Then also we have the implications and application of this particular research. This result actually show a kind of significant implication in terms of developing new treatment strategies. And the probiotic bacteria we tested, the 4 of them have actually demonstrated a therapeutic potential as inhibitors of Staphylococcus aureus biofilm. And I believe so more that the research opened up possibilities for exploring these probiotics as alternative treatment, particularly for Staph aureus infections associated in indwelling medical devices and also even in the body system, as the case may be. And I really would know, or probably talk about how to unlock the full potential of these probiotics, probably by going through what we call metabolomics, genomics, and all others. So we are trying to see how to go further in this experiment by making sure that we understand the main particular metabolites that are actually helping in this annihilation of this Staphylococcus aureus biofilm. So by the time we now get the metabolites, we can now start to see how we can inculcate them into our diet. So it's not going to be like using one stone to kill two birds. By now, we take these metabolites, we put them inside food substances, and we take them. So this food is going to actually nourish our soul and at the same time, nourish our body. And at the same time, the metabolites there, we now annihilate the growth of these biofilms, just in case of people that actually have, that are already being infected by these Staphylococcus aureus. So to conclude, my study demonstrates the probiotic bacteria such as Lactobacillus Paltarum, Listenobacillus fusiformis, Penibacillus ave, and Bacillus sabensis, and they exhibit promising biofilm inhibition activity. That's against Staphylococcus aureus biofilms. And I'm sure that these probiotics, they have the potential to be explored for development of new treatments, to be honest, and particularly for Staph aureus infection. That is associated with medical devices and also with human tissues. And I believe so much that this work will encourage further research, like I said, using the metabolomics and proteomics and as well as genomic techniques to understand the exact substances, chemical substances that help in the inhibition of Staphylococcus aureus biofilm. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for the talk. Thank you so much. Kindly wait behind to the end of the session to answer some questions pertaining to this just presented work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, kindly,
yes.
Kindly close that. Okay, thank you. Then the next speaker now is Mr. Ikena Chibuike. Are you here?
Oh, sorry, I have a slide with me, so I'll be sharing from here.
Oh, okay. You can share your screen. Mr. Ikena, you have the floor.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Chibuike Ikena Victor from University of Nigeria, ANSHK. I'm here to present a project I did on the topic isolation and screening of cellulitic fungi from sewage water. Next slide, please. Okay, the outline. I will talk about the introduction, the study, objectives, results, conclusions, significance of the study, and I'll also put up some recommendations. Okay, cellulose is one of the most abundant polymers on the earth, and we have shown sewage to have been one of the richest sources of cellulose. And also that cellulose content in sewage is about 150 to 178 milligram SL per liter, and the degradation of cellulosic substance is significant to enrich the global source of carbon. So cellulose, according to what is on ground based on research, cellulose is yet to be utilized at to its full potentials, and that is the reason why this research is important, because the basic area is that I tried to make sure that the cellulose we get, if we can be able to get the isolates that can be able to degrade this cellulose, so that we can utilize this isolate in applications for several other applications, like industrial applications, which are of very large at very large scales. So naturally, the cellulose degradation is mediated by enzymes and systems referred to as cellulases. Then these cellulases are enzymes that are produced by these cellulotic fungi I'm going to talk about, that actually degrade this cellulose. Next slide. So these are the study objectives. The study objectives, I want to isolate and identify the cellulitic fungi from sewage water. And the rationale behind this study is that I noticed while searching the literature that there is little, or even at that time, no much papers that talked about sewage water as a sample source for to getting cellulitic fungi. So I reasoned, okay, since there is little effort made in this area, let me see if I can use this to isolate my fungi and see if they can be able to degrade them cellulitic fungi. So the novelty of this, my work, is that I was able to identify the fungi isolates that I got, and then they were able also to degrade them the cellulose. Okay, next slide. So this is my methodology, my sample collection. I collected it from the sewage and treatment plant and from University of Nigeria and Soka. So I transported them aseptically to the laboratory for microbiological analysis. And my isolation, I used PDA for isolation. I supplemented it with chloramphenicol in order to inhibit bacterial growth and contamination also. Then identified them using cultural and physiological morphological techniques shown by the isolates. And then I now screened for cellulitic isolates. So I screened using carboxymethyl cellulose media. This CMC, this cellulose there serves as a carbon source. So if the organisms are able to degrade this media by showing zones of hydrolysis, it means that they are able to degrade the CMC agar I used. So the result of my work, okay, here shows a typical identification of it. So these are the identified the ways I use them to identify the organisms. I use them, okay, their morphological, and then this is the percentage of occurrence. So I checked if the organisms I got, I had to check and see that, and it showed that Aspergillus species were most predominant in the sewage water and the sample isolation. So this is the major result, I would say, because here is the basic degradation effect. So Aspergillus niger produced 1.667 hydrolysis capacity. Now, if you can look down, according to the keys I wrote down, you see that to get the hydrolysis capacity, I have to divide the zone of diameter produced by the organism by the colony diameter. So, and it showed that Trichoderma viride was the highest hydrolyzer. And then this is a graphical illustration of the results gotten from. So you can see Trichoderma had this. Okay, this is an illustration.
Hello,
This is an
Mr.
illustration of the zone of hydrolysis.
We're rounding up now.
Okay, this is an illustration of the zone of hydrolysis. So in conclusion, the study has demonstrated the cellulose degrading potential of the organisms such as Trichoderma viride and the rest of them, and that Trichoderma viride produced the highest zone of hydrolysis. That is to say that it's in the experiment, it had the highest hydrolysis of cellulose. So thank you very much. So okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Kindly wait behind for any question in the chat box. Thank you so much.
No.
Then the next speaker is Mr. Mohammed Babadam. Are you here?
Yes, sir, I'm here with you. Yes,
kindly
sir.
share your screen.
I'm here with you. I don't know if you can give me a few minutes.
Okay. Second.
Okay.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, we can hear you. You can continue.
Fine. My name is Mohammed Babadamu, and I'm from Department of Geography here in Yobe State University, Damaturu, Nigeria. And I'm making presentation on the health risks of human exposure to livestock waste in urban Potiskum, Nigeria. And as you may recall, there is a modification in the topic based on what you have there in your schedule, based on the suggestions and opinions of the publishers. You may likely effect the necessary corrections if possible. Thank you. The demand for livestock product is ever increasing worldwide, and this may be attributable to the changing lifestyle, population growth, per capita income, and other factors. However, in northern Nigeria, people are engaging in urban livestock rearing, especially at household level. This is attributable to the cultural lifestyle of the population. In addition, the waste therefrom might be contaminating the environment, thereby breeding and spreading diseases. It is against this background that it is imperative to assess the livestock keepers' perception of the health risks of human exposure to the livestock waste. Then the materials and methods. The study was conducted in Potiskum town, which is the most populous and cultural urban settings in Yobe State, Nigeria. And for this study, qualitative approach was used where multi-stage sampling technique was employed, a household survey basically focusing on the perception and awareness of the livestock keepers on the health risk of livestock was assessed, and then on-site field observations was also used to see the level of contamination made by the livestock waste in the environment. Then the data generated was subjected to descriptive analysis of the study. Then findings. The study revealed that 63.7% of the population considered urban livestock rearing as a key livelihood activity, out of whom 83.9% of them perceived the waste it generates as harmless to the humans. Therefore, this might be the reason why the average distance between the livestock rearing point and the human dwelling place was only 4.3 meters. Equally, water sources, which are mostly hand dug wells, and livestock rearing point was only 3.7 meters apart. These findings highlight the likelihood of contaminating not only the water sources, but also food resources and air. Then, furthermore, it was discovered that the waste is exposing 89.2% to flies. That's 89.2% of the population are exposed to flies, mosquitoes, as rodents as a result of the waste that the livestock are generating. Whereas 83.4% were unaware of their exposure to toxic heavy metals, which are mostly present in the livestock waste. In addition, despite the fact that livestock waste is emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which is contributing to the global warming and climate change, only 11.3% of the studied population were expecting such association between the livestock waste and then the climate change as well as the global warming. These findings demonstrate a huge knowledge gap that may further complicate the problem of health risk of the livestock waste in the study area. Then conclusion and then recommendations. Based on these findings, it can be concluded that this livelihood activity is still culturally practiced, given that the waste are still poorly managed. And it also reveals a very low knowledge about the health implications of the waste, especially among the livestock keepers. This raises great public health concerns as to how the livestock waste affect the environment and in the end, the human population within and around the environment. As a result of this, the study recommends that authorities should formulate an eco-friendly policy that will sustain the activity and safeguard the people from its risk. Here we mean a policy should be formulated by governments where the policy should have that picture of the contemporary realities of environmental management so that demand will be at the safer side and also the economy being a livelihood activity that critically the people rely upon for their daily life. Again, it recommends that authorities and development partners should heavily invest in advocacy campaigns on the dangers of the livestock waste on humans. Because since the study highlighted a huge knowledge gap of the implications of the livestock waste on human population, there is critical need for high-powered advocacy campaigns among or between the development partners, government authorities, and of course, the livestock keepers in order to create awareness on the dangers of the livestock waste on human population and the health implications therefrom. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, for the talk. So kindly wait behind for any questions you might have at the end of this session. Then the next speaker is Mr. Ridwan Salahuddin. Are you with us?
Yes.
Kindly share your screen.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Are you seeing? Okay, okay. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, please. Okay, my name is Ridwan Salahuddin. Just like the last speaker mentioned, probably the organizing committee may need to look at some of the review that was suggested and has been effected. So like he's saying, that has affected the topic also in my own case. So talking AI is what I'll be speaking about, meaning the animating static images into talking video. So this is the outline of my discussion. I will start with an introduction. What we are talking about here is, say for instance, where you have a static image of an individual. Again, by the way, I need to make a disclaimer here that this image is AI generated, so it's not image of anybody existing in this world. So that is just for ethical consideration. So having such an image and a driving modality, such as a video, an audio, or a text, any sequential data can be used to animate that static image into a talking video. And here I will just play a little example for us to. Okay, so that is animating that my static image into a speech that is welcoming us to this forum discussion. Now, we need to understand the background of what is really going on. Actually, we are trying to align audio with images, and then we want to subsequently animate unseen image of a face to a talking video. So how that is being achieved is by segmenting the audio wave into components in what we call a frame. So we have different components of the speech using some Fourier transform, like the discrete Fourier transform. At the end of the day, what we are going to achieve is to have a MEL spectrogram that is a visual representation of the audio. So that it per frame can now be used to align the images of the video. And also you are going with me that a video is just a successive display of static images. So we are referring, like I've displayed some frames of a video now here. So I can now use the audio representation to predict the output at the video end. So I will quickly brush on some of the deep learning technologies that are used to achieve this, starting with the encoders that are needed to downsample our data. The data involved here are audio data and visual data, right? So we want to downsample them into a more sizable size that we can plug into our deep learning model for a good prediction. Secondly, we need some model to keep track of the sequential dependency in the data. In the case of the speech now, because the speech is a sequential data that previous timestamp, the current timestamp is dependent on the previous timestamp, and that's continued that way. So we need something like an LSTM to keep track of both the long and the short time memory in the data. So when we were able to achieve the encoding of both the image and the audio, we can now align them into a generator to decode them back to a human reasonable form. In the literature, there are two popular approaches researchers have used to do this animation. One of which, each of which I want to discuss here. The first is the one-stage framework, which generally depend on what is known as the generative adversarial network architecture. And what is mostly done here is, like I've already mentioned, that we need to align both information into a common dimension. Then that can be passed to a generator that will predict an output. But because we are training with huge tons of video, we can now compare what is being generated with the actual ground truth of the video. And then in the way generative adversarial network are built is to have another network known as the discriminator that will judge the realism of what is being generated as being okay or not. So the other framework that is popular is using some intermediation in this learning. And what is mostly used is the facial landmark as another representation. We map the audio.
Mr. Ridwan, you have less than a minute. Thank you.
Okay, so I will just quickly rush to the approach we are proposing, because there is a problem with the existing framework, in the sense that we cannot model things like the eye blink, the head pose, just based on the audio alone. So we are now proposing to have a personalized retraining network of an individual old video. And these are some of the mathematics of how we are doing that. We just show some experimentation on what we have been able to achieve. This is manipulation of just the mouth. This is manipulation of just the eye. This is some head pose. And finally, I will show, but because I don't have much time, I will just, but what I'm trying to show there is that okay, so in conclusion is the talking face generation has this inherent problem of the it has inherent problem of detecting the head pose, the eye blink, and okay, so these are my references. Thank you for your audience.
Thank you so much for the talk. It's quite a long and interesting topic, but I think you should work on the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's the fifth speaker in our session presentation. Now we call on the guest speaker in person of Dr. Blessing Arioti to give us our talk. Thank you. Dr. Blessing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for this invitation. So today I'm going to be focusing mostly on some of the aspect of climate change that is not well known to the general public. So, and that's why I chose this topic specifically. And also, I will take you through some of the field work we've done related to how climate change may affect the growth of the mountains that we see around. So what people know generally about climate change, we talk about rise in temperature, we talk about sea level, sea level rising, we talk about some forests, getting caught up by fires and all of that. And major causes to all of these have been related to mostly maybe man-made greenhouses, greenhouse effect, but climate change really, is it really about our society? Is it really about our contribution? Well, my focus will not focus on that today, but I take you through another slide that shows that the issue of climate change does not only relate to our generation in terms of maybe 100,000 plus years ago, but as we could see from this chart, so on the vertical axis, we see changes in the average global temperature change. And then on the horizontal axis, we see time in million years. So this actually shows that the temperature changes over the past million years all over the globe. So probably we are here at this time, and there is a dashed line here that shows the average temperature change between this year 1850 to 1900. So maybe the rise in present temperature is due to man-made greenhouses. We're not sure. But one thing I wanted to pick from this picture is that over this period, human beings were not existing, and yet we have global changes in temperature. Sometimes it's cooling. We have ice ages, and sometimes it's global warming. The temperature is very rising, and we have lots of precipitation. So, but why do we have to care so much about climate change? I'll quickly take you through what I have here. So here is our Earth. We live on Earth. And as many of us may know that the Earth, if we take a slide like the lemon wedge, we could see the component of the Earth, and the hard part of the Earth is made up of broken plates. I try to use some very loose language so that at least my audience can follow. So we have the outer shell is actually broken into pieces, just similar to how we see the orange here. So we live on these broken pieces, but we don't flow. These broken pieces are known as the tectonic plates. These tectonic plates could move, against each other, or they could move far away from each other. And when two plates meet together, they collide and they begin to generate mountain ranges. As many of us may know, we must have been seeing some of the mountain ranges. And usually when mountains develop, the very first thought is to believe that tectonic activities are the main cause of mountain range. But over the time, research shown that where we have rising mountain also correlate with the zone of, high precipitation, where climate has actually induced what we can see now in terms of precipitation, in terms of rainfall, and that has brought some questioning. Why is it that where we have most rapid exhumation or most rapid vertical rock motion to the surface, why is it correlating with where we have the intense zone of climate change? And that is where my discussion will focus on today. So what we have done is to contribute to this research question, So we went to Northwest India, Himalaya, along this river channel, the Sutlej River channel, and we picked up some pieces of rock that have been exposed from the river channel. So what actually happened is that sometimes in the past, the present exposed rock were deep down in the subsurface, so they were not exposed. So for them to have been exposed, erosion has taken place, the top layer has been eroded off, so we could study how fast such rock has migrated over time. Then how does it also correlate to the period we know that major climate change has occurred? So we use this method basically to understand this kind of rock vertical migration to the surface. This method could be used, but for our study, we use the apatite, uranium, thorium, helium dating, and we also combine it with FESPA, optical simulated luminescence dating, and then we solve some thermomechanical equation to derive our result. So this last image actually shows how this method works. For example, if we take a rock that was sometimes here below 130 degrees Celsius on the subsurface, and then you erode everything at the top of it and is now exposed at the surface. Is it possible for us to know the time it takes such rock to migrate from the subsurface to the surface where we can now pick it up and examine it? And so what we did during that period is similar to how, battery would store. Have a battery which is almost flat, and then as it increases, as it's being exposed to the surface, it stores up charges, or it stores up some electric charges. So these electric charges are what we retrieve in the lab, and we're able to convert it into something that allows us to understand how such rock has migrated through time. So this is the result. So we took 8 samples, only 7 worked among the 8 samples. And then basically what I just wanted to focus on here, we have for this rock is migrating very slowly. So on the picture, you have a temperature and you have the time. So over the last 500,000 years, so this rock has been moving very slowly at a rate less than 1 mm per year since 200,000 years ago. But the rock sample at the center moves very fast, only between 15,000 years ago at the rate of 10 to 14 mm per year. And we correlated this event and found that this period were associated with the rapid migration of the rock to the surface happens last glacier. We talk about Ice Age. Many of us have watched the Ice Age film. So the very most prominent and very close to our generation happens around 19 to 20,000 years ago. So at the end of that Ice Age, a lot of water were released into that river, which probably, helped erosion of the top rock layer and ended up bringing the rock sample to the surface. And to the other side of the divide of the river, we also saw moderately rock migration to the surface, which started around 150 to about 100,000 years ago. And for us to understand how this has happened through time, we combine other methods that allows us to at least see the migration of the rock, of one of the rock among those ones that were moving very fast, to see through time to up to about 4 million years. It's still the same plot. You have the vertical axis temperature and the horizontal axis at the for the time at the horizontal axis. And this plot actually shows the probability density curve. So as it moves to, as the probability goes to 1, then we can read the value more clearly. It at least gives us a more clear migration. So what we have here, we saw a change here. You could see almost there is an inflection point here that correlates with around 2.5 million years ago. And then we tried to blow up what is going on around here, which is what we have in the second image. As you can see here, tallies with the 150 to about 1 million years, 1 million years ago. So apology for this for the box there. So what
Yeah.
we saw is
Hello,
that,
doctor. Please, we have less than 30 seconds. Sir.
yeah, so I mean, after this, yeah, thank you very much. So what we saw is that there is a deceleration immediately after 0.5, and again, acceleration of the rock to the surface at 10,000 years ago. So what I've been able to tell us in this presentation is that climate change does a lot of things around us, which we may not know, and that climate change does not necessarily have to do with man-made greenhouse emission, because even while human beings were not on planet Earth, a lot of this climate change has occurred over the time. So I thank you for inviting me for this presentation once again.
Well, thank you so much, Doctor, for such a wonderful guest talk. Thank you so much. And this comes to the end of this session, speaker. Then the next item is question and answer session in this particular session. The first question we have is for Mr. Emmanuel. Mr. Emmanuel, are you with us? Mr. Emmanuel.
Yes, I'm here with you.
Okay, there is a question for you in the chat box. Can you see that?
Okay. I've not seen the question.
I just reposted it. You can check the chat box. Oh, sorry. I sent it to the wrong person.
Let me read to you again. It says, thank you, Emmanuel, for the talk. I would like you to elaborate on how bacteria can be employed to remediate PAH polluted air.
All right. For the remediation of PAH polluted soil, one can easily find the indigenous bacteria from the sites, actually. And in this case, now you may be using any of the means of bioremediation, such as bioaugmentation or biostimulation. You understand? So actually, in bioaugmentation, what actually happens is that the bacteria are being introduced and then used in order to degrade toxic substances that are in the environment, while allowing some environmental factors such as oxygen, temperature, and the pH of the environment to be controlled and to be conducive for the bacteria in order to perform maximally. And in this case, the bacteria utilizes these very toxic waste. The bacteria feeds on this toxic waste and then use it to grow.
Hello, sir. Kindly clip the response short. Thank you, sir.
Okay, it's all right. So, in a nutshell, the bacteria itself utilizes the organism in order to grow, and this is done by the action of the enzymes in the bacteria. That is how the bacteria actually works in order to remediate the soil environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the response. I hope the questioner got the response very well.
Can I give a rebuttal? For instance, bacteria that are harvested, isolated from water and land can be used to remediate the polluted water on land. So, but for the air, very few bacteria grows in the air. So if you want to do some bioremediation of polluted air, and then you isolate the bacteria, which natural habitat is in the land or water. So how do you sustain the bacteria to, how do you make it a system? Just describe the system you
keep it straight, sir.
Oh, yes, I said, how do you make a system where the bacteria you isolated is from the water and it's natural, this hardly will survive in the air alone. So how do you make it, how do you filter or channel the air to be, to transmit those PAH into the bacteria? Or will the bacteria capture the PAH from the air just directly?
Wow.
Sorry, please let me come in there. Mr. Emmanuel, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Please,
hear you.
can you just send a response to the chat box? So we want to like keep track of time, please. We have very limited time. So just send a response.
It's all right.
Chat box. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, please.
thank you so much. The next question is for Mr. Mohammed. Can you simply answer that in less than 30 seconds? Sorry, sir.
Yes, I'm with you. As the world is struggling to achieve sustainable development goals, focusing on SDG 6, which has to do with water and sanitation, and much interest is given on human open defecation as to how it affects morbidity and mortality, counting less of the livestock waste. And it is imperative for you to know that in this study area, a greater share of the population are, less, have a low degree of, awareness and literacy level on a good number of livestock or livelihood issues. As such, then, if interest is much given on open defecation as a contaminant of human environment and human, related issues, then there's need for us to take a look at livestock weight as it's how it affects man and the man's cycle of life. For this, we have purposefully selected the communities where households are engaging in livestock rearing, and also we have used snowballing sampling to pick the communities or the households where livestock rearing is engaged upon by the population.
Mr. Mohammed,
as it relates to sustainability question, that is why we say we recommend formulation of an eco-friendly policy that will, educate the livestock keepers on the implication of the activity on human life, and of course, the approach that should be used in managing not only the waste, but also the environment entirely in order to keep the sustainability of the environment in question. So these are the approaches, and if you refer to the recommendations, we have basically made that very clear.
Thank you so much. Then the last question is for Mr. Ridwan. Sorry, in 30 seconds, can we have the response?
Okay. Sorry, can you read the question, please?
Okay, it says, as we are working on creating a talking AI using images and audio, what are the steps in curbing misuse or identification of fake videos in this line, especially in this era of various fake news or fake videos?
Yeah, that is a very important question. Like I mentioned, as a disclaimer, that the image that was used was actually generated. But to answer this question, we can also have in our encoding some form of coding that can detect fake images. Just like, there are websites for deepfake now that you can analyze some images being fake or not. So, but that is another line of research, which is not really my own interest for now. Okay. But of course, it is achievable.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this comes to the end of this session. Thank you so much. If there's any other question, you can follow up with the speakers, or if you have any other suggestion, we can reach out to them in various emails or session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiamiyu. Thank you for that enlightening session. I really enjoyed myself. I trust we all did. Without further ado, I would like to invite the session chair for the social science category, and that's in person of Mr. Abo Sopruchi Christian. I believe he's with us. So please, let's take the time, and it's really important we keep the time. Please, thank you very much. Mr. Abo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to chair this session. So, distinguished colleagues, I wish to welcome you to the second session of the 2023 ANSHK Research Forum on Advancing Research Frontiers in the Dynamic Landscape of 21st Century Challenges. So, since the only constant thing is change, it becomes imperative to research our world and how it has changed and how best to tackle our present challenges for a better future. So, this session, which will last for 35 minutes, includes 3 presentations and 1 plenary presentation from our guest speaker. Ms. Ruth Bello will deliver the first presentation titled A Comparative Study on the Relationship between Health Expenditure, Environmental Factors, and Life Expectancy across OECD countries, followed by Mr. Bamidele our last paper on advancing research in intimate partner violence, what we can learn from using repeated cross-sectional data analysis. And then followed by a presentation by Sopruchi, which is going to talk about the reasons people give for categorizing speakers into ethno-linguistic groups. After these paper presentations, we'll invite our eminent guest speaker, Mr. Philip Sayeni from McGill University, Canada, to enlighten us on advancing research frontiers through open access publishing, findings from a study of Canadian researchers. I hope these presentations will broaden our horizon. Regarding the duration of each presentation, each of the first three speakers will present in 7 minutes, while the guest speaker will deliver his talk in 10 minutes, followed by a 5-minute question and answer session. You can send your questions in the chat box during the presentations. And we also request that all participants assess each presentation by completing the online questionnaire using the link at the end of your copy of the abstract. You may also include your questions and comments to the presenter on the questionnaire. Without further ado, let us invite our first presenter, Ms. Ruth Bello, for her presentation. Thank you, Ms. Ruth. You have the floor.
I'm trying to share my screen.
Okay. You have 7 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, my name is Ruth Oluwatomi from Department of Sociology and Social Policy, Ligna University. And the title of my presentation is a comparative study on the relationship between earth expenditure, environmental factors, and life expectancy across the whole OECD countries. And here are my content of the presentation. Looking at the topic of the presentation, there are some key factors and keywords in it, which are health, earth expenditure, life expectancy, and environment. So I'll briefly explain what these terms means. I know it's not new to each and every one of us, but globally, earth has been regarded as an important need for women. And according to one of the researchers, came 2013, he regarded health as one of the instruments that could determine the economic growth of a particular country. And likewise, earth expenditure is regarded as the aggregate sum of the amount, both private and public spendings on health. Life expectancy has been known to be the average expected years an individual is presumed to live, according to the Population and Demographic Indicator 2016. But globally, the average life expectancy has been recorded to be 67.8. This is according to the WHO 2018. And environment is just the geographical area where humans live. Now, looking at the previous findings, some of the researchers have also conducted similar studies relating to health, expenditure, and life expectancy. And according to Jacqueline, it was posted that there's no significant relationship between life expectancy of both men and women and health expenditure. This means that health expenditure may not be a factor to be considered for human life expectancy. Likewise, some other studies posted that negative relationship exists between expenditure and life expectancy in developing country. And according to this Frederick et al., it was said that CO2 also have a negative relationship with health expenditure. Now, this study, the objective of this study is look at the relationship between health expenditure and life expectancy at birth and at older age. Because looking at the previous findings, previous study conducted by other researchers has majorly focused on life expectancy and health expenditure at birth. But this study is looking at the relationship between life expectancy and at birth and at older age, that's precisely 80 years, and looking at the moderating factor, environmental factor as a moderating factor for this study. The study is actually a cross-sectional study with across 15 countries within a year. And the country has been selected, a random selection has been made across the country within the European regions, ranging from the Western European to the Northern European and the Southern European countries. The country selection was reduced to 15 to avoid missing data. And secondary data was used for this study, which was gotten from the OECD statistics, and it is a quantitative data. So the variables of this study include health expenditure as independent variable and environmental factors used as a moderating factor for it. And the result of this study was presented in scatter plots and charts. So this is the result of some of the results gotten from the previous finding. Looking at the relationship between total life expectancy of female at birth and health expenditure, it was seen that a negative correlation was found in this, whereby looking at that of the male, a positive correlation was deduced for the male. That is, there's a negative relationship between life expectancy at birth, between female life expectancy at birth and government expenditure, but for male, it appears to be positive. Likewise, looking at the older age, that is 80 years old, it was found that positive relationship exists between the male life expectancy at 80 years and government expenditure, whereas the female appears negative. Also, a various correlation was conducted between the variables, and it was seen that looking at the environmental factors, which is CO2 emission, because among the environmental factors, green gases was the amount of green gases in the environment was considered, and green gases such as the methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and among these green gases, CO2 emission appears to be the most significant pollutant in the environment. So in this study, I chose CO2 emission because of its predominance in the environment, to consider the relationship between environmental factor and life expectancy at birth and at older age. And the result of this analysis shows a negative correlation between CO2 emission and life expectancy across this country. Notwithstanding, the data of I also conducted data showing the life expectancy, how it ranges in this country, and I will observe that this country, all the 15 countries in the European Union, has higher life expectancy that is above 67.8, which was presumed by the WHO in 2018. So the life expectancy ranges from 80 above to 90 above, both at birth and at older age, which shows that, and which means that CO2 emission does not really have effects on life expectancy across these 15 countries. The charts, the scatter plots there shows how it varies from one region across the country, how it varies. And looking at this quadrant, it could be seen that some regions have a low amount of CO2 emission and low life expectancy. Why I said low life expectancy is that we have some of the country that has above 90, whereby some of them has lesser than 90. So this 85.5 example, I consider it as low based on the country that has the highest life expectancy. And it could be seen that some of the country has, for example, Germany has a very high life expectancy and also high amount of CO2 emission. So this is that the CO2 emission does not affect life expectancy in some of the country. Also, so the conclusion is that the CO2 emission is not a factor that can be considered alone to affect life expectancy across in the European region, though it may affect some other regions, but for the European regions, it could be seen that CO2 emission does not really affect their life expectancy at birth and at older age.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation and for the passion you use in presenting it. I could see that it is a topic that is dear to you. So the next presenter is Mr. Bamidele. And he'll be talking to us about Part 9 intimate violence.
Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. You have 7 minutes.
I have 7 minutes. When does it start counting?
It started already, so we just continue.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's a privilege to be here. I would like to share with you this afternoon some of the research work that I'm pushing in the Global South with respect to intimate partner violence against women. So by means of introduction, so this is my outline, the introduction, then the study problems, the objectives, the empirical example of what I'm trying to say. I'm going to demonstrate it and show you the methods, the report, what you can actually do with repeated cross-sectional data and the result. So by means of introduction, intimate partner violence is a well-known problem. It is any behavior by an intimate partner or ex-partner that causes either physical, sexual, or emotional harm to those in the relationship. And the problem is that IPV mostly disproportionately affects more women than men. So it makes a victim of women. So it is a global public health pandemic. In fact, the Secretary General of the United Nations called it the shadow pandemic. And that is the current term for intimate partner violence, especially during the lockdowns. So now intimate partner violence affects more women also in the global south. The intersectionality theory tells us that when you look at the prevalence rate, especially results from Sardina published in the Lancet in 2022, we have higher prevalence in the global south than in the global north. Whereas when you look at intimate partner violence in the global north, they have been able to do so many things to address the problem because they have longitudinal data sets that they can use to trace the problem, the prevalence, the predictors, as well as the interventions they've tried to introduce to mitigate the problem in the global north. But when we look at the global south, we discover that the studies, longitudinal studies of IPV are really, really scarce. There is a problem. And so if you do not have longitudinal studies of IPV, of course, you cannot claim causality. So you cannot evaluate the effectiveness of interventions against this problem. And probably that may explain why it remains high. So we need to do something. If the global north cannot help us, of course, we researchers in the global south can help ourselves. And that is what I'm pushing with this paper. So there is a data scarcity in the global south, and what we lack is longitudinal data. But we do have something, and that is repeated cross-sectional data. These are data collected across several rounds, like some of them every 5 years, on intimate partner violence against women. We can make use of this. And then we can use advanced statistical methods in order to decompose or to try to see difference in differences and then understand the trends in IPV and its predictors at population level. So what I did is to look at northern Nigeria as an empirical example. And I took 3 waves of cross-sectional data from the Nigeria Demographic and Health Survey of 2008, 2013, and 2018, with a total sample of 12,920 couples in northern Nigeria. And now, what I wanted to do is just to showcase the possibilities. I employ 2 theories: the disinhibition theory that talks about the potential effect of husband's alcoholism on his likelihood to perpetrate violence, as well as the attitudes of the husband, as well and that of the wife towards violence. So a relationship where violence is perceived to be acceptable, then IPV is going to occur in that relationship. Now, my question is, does changes in IPV across in alcohol consumption among husbands across time and in their acceptance of or acceptability of violence affects the prevalence of violence in intimate relationship in northern Nigeria? And this is what I found. I found that, yes, across, if you look at the north altogether, you can pay more attention to the geopolitical zones in the north. You discover that relationship where the husbands justify violence increased between 2008 to 2018. If you look at alcohol abuse, and this is a very strange thing in northern Nigeria, alcohol consumption is on the increase. And of course, it is led by the north central region. Now, if you go further down, the prevalence of intimate partner violence against women, actual perpetration of physical, sexual, and emotional violence is also on the increase in all the geopolitical zones. Now, you will discover that there is a kind of a correlation here. But how do we prove that? Now, you can use a decomposition technique called the MVDCMP, introduced by Powers et al. Now, this will tell you how differences in the number of people that justify violence across the 2 times you collected the data and the differences in the effect of the variables actually affect the changes in intimate partner violence. And what I found, just to simplify for this short period, is that Changes in attitude accounted for about 15% because many people rejected violence, but they became more likely to perpetrate it. And alcohol consumption by husband contributed about 7%. So if you want to address violence in the global south, at least from northern Nigeria, then you also need to focus on alcohol too, whether irrespective of religion, because I control for religion and age. So conclusion of this study, just to give you a snapshot, there are several other countries that can benefit from this kind of study. All researchers in all these 27 countries with at least 2 waves of nationally representative cross-sectional data can try to use repeated cross-sectional data to look at trends in IPV. They can gain a lot from it. So thank you very much. Yeah, I'm already done. If the expected is currently unavailable, then we can make use of the available. And we have repeated cross-sectional data in all these 27 countries. So what is stopping us? So that is why I titled this presentation, Advancing Research in Intimate Partner Violence Against Women, what we can learn from repeated cross-sectional data analysis. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and for keeping to time. So we'll move to the third presenter, which happens to be me. Sorry, let me just share my slide. So thank you so much. I'm glad to be presenting this research to you all. Actually, this is the first time in a while that I'm presenting my research to a Nigerian audience. So it means a lot to me. So let's dive right into it. For those of us in Hong Kong, have you ever spoken English? And someone tries to guess the country you are from by asking you, are you from Nigeria? Or if we think back when we were in Nigeria, has anyone told you that you're from Hausa, Igbo, or Yoruba, or any other ethnic group based on how you spoke English? What are the social psychological processes that underlie this ethnic categorization based on speech? That is what I'm going to talk about today by looking at what reasons people give for categorizing people into ethnic groups. Since this is an audience that know about the social linguistic context in Nigeria, I will not bore you with the linguistic situation in Nigeria. That is how many languages we have and how many of them are major and minor. So, ethnic categorization is a complex process. But if I'm going to simplify it, I'm going to simplify it with these 3 processes. It starts with speech perception, hearing the person speak. And then it proceeds to speech recognition. That is the recognition of the speech features and trying to map what you've heard, the phoneme, the syntax, and the morphology to a particular ethnic group. And then moving forward to categorize the person you've heard into an ethnic group. And what did I do in this research? What I did was I recruited 6 speakers, 2 speakers each, a male and a woman, a male and a female, from Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba ethno-linguistic groups. Their mean age is 29.5 years. And I gave them a paragraph to read as naturally as possible. And the average recording of that paragraph was 37 seconds. And I now played these 6 voices to 406 Nigerian students from 3 universities. And from the first university, I had 151 persons, and the second 144, and then the third 111. And from these 406, I had 138 as males and 268 as females. So what I did was I gave them I played these recordings to them and then asked them to tell me where they think this person is from, and then give me the reasons why they chose the place they have indicated. And after coding the questionnaire responses, I identified 9 ethnic categories. That is Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, de-ethnicized Nigeria for in South Middle Belt. And you can see that from this table that there is no 100% accurate recognition of these speakers based on speech. All we can see is that for the Hausa speakers, they received the highest recognition rate, followed by the Igbo speakers and then the Yoruba speakers. One thing we can see here is that for the Yoruba speakers, the respondents rightly categorized them as Yoruba, 39%, and then they misidentified them as Igbo, 35%. So what this shows is that there tends to be a movement, a change in progress from ethnic speech to an ethnic neutral speech, especially among educated Igbo and Yoruba speakers. And so I asked them the reasons why they gave for categorizing these speakers into these ethnic groups. And 8 reasons were predominant. And the most common is accent. And then surprisingly, they mentioned behaviorist tendencies. And then GEB stands for good educational background. And then some people said it's based on their intuition. And others said there is no reason, they can just provide any reason. And some said it's because of poor educational background. And others said it's because of how verbally disfluent their speech is. And then some others said it is because of fluency. So what I did again was to do a 2-way contingency table analysis to find an association between the ethnic categorization and the reasons for ethnic categorization. And one thing I found that is common among all the speakers that I played to them is that there is an association between good ethnic background and de-ethnicization. So what we can say is like an apprenticeship process where the more education you have, the less ethnic sounding your speech is going to be. And that is the more difficult it is for people to actually place you into a particular ethnic group. And also we saw an association between verbal fluency and de-ethnicization. So de-ethnicization is a term that I use for speakers that the respondent didn't assign a particular ethnic group to. So which means there is no ethnic identity attached to their speech. And common among all these speakers as well is the link between accent and Yoruba, which also shows that this change in progress is not yet pronounced, that that will make us to rule out the role of accent in identifying someone's speech based on someone's ethnicity based on how the person speaks. And then we saw for the Hausa speakers, there was this association between poor ethnic background, and then some of them classify them as people from Middle Belt. And so they say that why they categorize them as people from Middle Belt is because they perceived this poor ethnic background, poor educational background from them. And so what this shows is that there is this link between the way you speak and then how people attribute you to a particular ethnic group. And it also shows that the higher you are in your educational level or status, the less ethnic sounding you are going to be. And these social psychological processes that underlie ethnic categorization are formed from stereotypes and intergroup differentiation. And we can as well see that ethnic categorization mediates language attitude, which is the broad research area that this aspect of this research was called from. So thank you all for listening. And we'll proceed to the next presenter, who happens to be the last presenter for this session. And that is
who is the guest speaker?
Mr. Phillips. And he'll be talking to us about advancing research frontiers. So Mr. Phillips, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me good?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right. So I'm just going to share my. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen? Good. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for inviting me to present my research to you all. I'm very, very honored to be part of this research forum for this year. And thanks to the research committee. I also want to appreciate Joyce for recommending me to be invited to present my research. So I'll be talking on advancing research frontiers through open access publishing, findings from a study of Canadian researchers. Okay, before I proceed, I'm a PhD candidate at the School of Information Studies at McGill University in Canada. Okay, so our research creation, use, and dissemination has been a focal point of higher education institutions globally, but what matters most is how research outputs are accessed and harnessed to bring about societal development. However, for many years, users, policymakers, practitioners, and researchers alike have witnessed bottlenecks in accessing the outcome of research. So this range from increasing access fees to research published behind paywalls to dwindling budgetary allocations for academic libraries, which limited the ability to subscribe to journals, and in return, it limited access to groundbreaking research to the privileged few. It's even worse for developing countries, as many researchers cannot afford to pay an average of 35 USD to access a research article that is published in those journals. As a result, in 2002, researchers and advocates converged in Budapest and developed the post-open access policy, popularly referred to as the Budapest Open Access Initiative. This was well received, and shortly after, 2 new declarations were made in Berlin and Bethesda in 2003. And since then, open access publishing has been promoted as a necessity for achieving equity of access to scientific information and knowledge. Recently, there have been several institutional funders supported open access policies across North America. I mean, this range from the tri-agency funding in Canada for open access publishing of research funded by them, and to recently the White House Office of Science and Technology policy, introducing a policy to ensure open access publishing of funded research in the United States. And of course, even the UNESCO also has a declaration for open access publishing of research. And so all of these have made open access publishing quite fundamental and widely debated in terms of advantages. And so what are the advantages of open access publishing? Researchers have discussed several advantages of open access publishing. The core idea of open access publishing is to ensure that anyone with access to the internet can access research output without the barriers of cost and copyright restrictions. Researchers have argued that open access helps to promote and advance the frontiers of knowledge, which in return helps to solve societal problems. In fact, some have demonstrated its benefit to both researchers in terms of visibility, citation increase and impact, as well as to the public and policymakers in terms of unaided access to knowledge, which helps to foster creativity development and advancement of research. So in this presentation, I will be sharing with you some findings on why Canadian researchers publish open access, and then make a case on how open access can help advance the frontiers of knowledge globally. So in my method, I employed qualitative research design to meet my research objective. Data was collected using semi-structured in-depth interviews. It was conducted online via Zoom. Participants included 20 professors from research-intensive universities in Canada, drawn from the humanities and social sciences disciplines. Participants' names were anonymized using pseudonyms. The data was analyzed with individual software following the reflective thematic analysis procedures as outlined by Brown and Clark. And what are the results from this finding? 3 main findings emerged from the thematic analysis as follows. The first one is that open access helps to improve readership. The second is open access helps to democratize knowledge. And the third is open access helps to bridge equity gap in knowledge access. The first point, so open access helps to improve readership. The interview participants discussed that open access helps to improve the reach and readership of their research, especially among audiences that may not think about the traditional venues such as journals and books. For instance, Charles noted there was a master's student in a translation program in China who wanted to translate part of my book into Chinese, which again, I'm like, this is really cool. I'm deeply flattered that people would like to do that. But the reason they could do that is because they could download the PDF for free. So this is really talking about why people, Charles was talking about why, it publish open access. So this suggests that open access helps to improve readership of articles, which may not be the case if these articles are behind paywalls. So the second point, open access helps to democratize knowledge. So many participants spoke on the need to democratize knowledge so everyone can have access to the output of research. They regarded research as a public good, and thus everyone should have access to it. For example, Olivia emphasized that I think ideally knowledge belongs to everybody and humanity as a whole. And I think it's really important to democratize knowledge in a global level. And open access really helps with that. And then another participant also mentioned that she published open access to set an example for democratizing knowledge. According to Hema, how do we set a good example for democratizing knowledge, especially if I'm working in the areas of social justice oriented work? And I want the communities I work with to be able to access that information. I think it's important that I do everything I can to make sure it's not totally behind paywalls. So the last thing that I'll be talking about is that open access helps to bridge equity gaps in knowledge access. Participants noted that it is very important to bridge the equity gaps in access to research output caused by cost and cost of access and exorbitant subscription fees. For instance, Farah opined, there is a huge equity gap that public do not have access to the knowledge as much as scholars do have. So basically the knowledge doesn't go too far. So we are just looking into our echo chambers. Now, I don't believe that should be the case. So I think open access is very much serving my equitable ideals of how knowledge should be shared. And furthermore, one other participant noted that open access is really important, and especially for academics at institutions or in parts of the world where the institutions can't afford the subscription fee for these things, right? I think it's really important. I realize that a lot of colleagues in other parts of the world doesn't have the same access. I mean, I can actually speak to what Sophia is saying here, because when I was in Nigeria doing my master's, my research was limited because I couldn't have access to some research, some articles. I had to rely on, institutional repositories and so open access helps to bridge these equity gaps in knowledge access. So what are the discussions from this study? These findings have shown that open access helps to advance the frontiers of research. It should be noted, however, that open access is not without limitations. The major barrier to open access publishing is exorbitant article processing charges. And I'm sure maybe some of you that wanted to publish your work in open access, some of these journals have been asked to pay some amount of money to make it, open access. That is called article processing charges, particularly in Gold open access, which costs thousands of dollars. For instance, in Nature, in Springer, in Elsevier, in a lot of these journals charge thousands of dollars to make your work available in open access. Other barriers include prevalent predatory open access journals. Predatory journals are the journals that, because of the profit that emanates from publishing open access, they actually send emails to researchers to publish their work, and then they charge them and promise them fast review, and then in doing so, they actually circumvent quality peer review, which in turn actually affects the output of research. And because of that, there's been issues of negative perception from researchers because of the challenges. The findings in this study largely support existing research. For instance, from Kwon and Rodriguez et al. In conclusion, this study showed the relevance of open access in ensuring an equitable and progressive society through unhindered access to research output. Hence, efforts should be made to fund and support viable open access models, such as the Diamond open access journals, which do not charge authors and readers. There needs to be a positive paradigm shift in perceptions toward open access publishing. Supportive disciplinary norms and institutional policies for open access publishing are needed to improve the uptake in disciplines such as the humanities and social sciences, which are currently lagging in practice and uptake when compared to the STEM fields. Finally, researchers in different career stages should be supported through targeted funding and by incentivizing their open access engagement and advocacy efforts. in higher education institutions. Thank you so much. These are my references, and this is my contact in case you want to follow up for questions or for collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yeni, for that wonderful presentation. I think everybody here can relate to the topic. So it's time for question and answer. We have one question here for Ms. Bello. I hope you can say it. Ms. Bello, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Can you see the question on the chat?
Yes, I can.
You can just respond to it in a few seconds. If you can.
Actually, for this study, CO2 was used specifically as a moderating factor alongside with earth expenditure to determine the trend of life expectancy across this country.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope that answer was okay for the person who asked it. So then for Mr. Yeni, you have two questions in the chat. Can you go ahead and then?
Okay, so trying to read the first question. How do researchers, especially early career researchers and those from the Global South, wouldn't access on the benefit from this? Okay, so from open access, so like I said, open access actually serves the equitable ideals that knowledge should be accessed, should be available to everyone. So I think that because of the fees that has been associated to open access publishing in some of these top ranked journals, top tier journals like Elsevier, Nature, and the likes. So it actually disproportionately limits researchers from the Global South. So, but the advocacy for diamond open access journals is actually to ensure that everyone's able to publish without having to pay to publish their work in open access. So I think that is really the way in which Global South researchers can actually benefit from this, because early career researchers have limited funding compared to mid-career researchers or to more senior researchers. And with if every journal is actually accepting, like for instance, operating the diamond open access, in case you don't know, is that journals do not charge authors to publish their work in open access, and readers have access to these articles free of charge. So that is actually the ideal model for open access publishing. I think that's the way researchers across the world can benefit from that. And I think the second question is what's the study's recommendation to open access limitations, especially the exorbitant charges? Yeah, so that's that. My recommendation is to fund diamond open access journals. For instance, Coalition S in Europe is actually promoting diamond open access journals, and a lot of researchers and advocates are now moving towards diamond open access journals. And there's for instance in Canada there's a government funding for university journals or association journals, and these are actually operating the diamond open access model. So this is actually the best way to reduce these exorbitant charges for article processing charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yeni, for the presentation and for the responses to the questions. And thank you to everyone who asked questions and everyone who paid attention to this session. On that note, I think we have come to the end of the session, and I will hand it over to Olua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That was a very interesting session once again. Thank you, Mr. Yeni, for the sacrifice of your time and the effort. Thank you, Ms. Ruth, Mr. Hollanda, Mr. What's the third presenter? Forgive me. Thank you very much for listening. Because of time, I'm going to move right on to the third session, which will be chaired by Mr. Alabi Toby. I believe he's on standby to take us through the engineering session. Are you there, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, please, you have the floor, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. And I believe you're having a wonderful evening. So I welcome also to this engineering session, which is the third session of our research forum on advanced research frontiers in dynamic landscape. of 21st century challenges. I can believe that, these themes is very timely, considering the AI revolutions and digitalizations of industrial process, and even how research is being conducted in methodology in all spheres of research. So it is with this great pleasures that I will usher us into this 45 minutes presentation, minute sessions. And in these sessions, we have 5 presentations, and 4 of it will be handled by our astute scholars from diverse engineering fields, and a guest speaker. We handled the last session with Dr. Kehinde Yomide, our former president. So, and I believe that throughout these presentations, we not only find it insightful and informative, but at the same time, give us some like personal, specific insight in order to navigate these, industrial, academic, research, evolutions, and the challenges associated with it in this 21st century. So, for these sessions, like other sessions, each presenter has 7 minutes. Speakers has 7 minutes, while our guest speakers has 10 minutes. These presenters let remind for the times, and after that, we have Q&A sessions, just 5 minutes. So during the presentations, if you have any questions for the presenters, just try to make this person name, like thank you, Mr. Manuel, and you ask the questions. And at the end of the day, we are going to entertain the questions. Also, as the session is going on, please, let's try to complete online questionnaires for each presenters, as these will be, we help them in order to improve in one way or the other. So without wasting much of our time, I'll be calling on the first presenter for these sessions, in the person of Mr. Yolua Davis. Mr. Yolua, you can start, share your screen and start. The time starts now, please.
Hello, everyone.
Go on, can hear you.
Okay, hello, everyone. I'm Yolua Esabiota Davis, and I'll be presenting on the topic concrete carbon uptake potential assessment using mathematical solution. This is my presentation outline, starting from the introduction to the conclusion. Cement production contributes to about 5 to 7% of CO2 global emission. However, cement-based materials, which include concrete, can absorb CO2 from the atmosphere during a complex process called carbonation. Now, carbonation involves concrete's physical and chemical properties, and this reaction involves CO2 and calcium silicate hydrate. This figure below demonstrates the process. CO2 from the atmosphere that fuses into concrete, and it dissolves in concrete to react with calcium silicate hydrate and calcium hydroxide to form a permanent stable compound called limestone. This is the chemical equation that goes on in the reaction between CO2 and the concrete chemical consequence. Now, CO2 uptake occurs throughout concrete service life and after service life. These are the terms used in literature in concerning concrete carbonation, and this is an analysis of Web of Science literature, how the terms have been used. And from the figure, carbonation is the most widely used amongst all, but carbonation can be referred to as carbon uptake, carbon absorption, and the rest as seen in the diagram. The purpose of mathematical modeling, number one, understand carbonation in concrete, and two, you can employ models to estimate carbon uptake in regional concrete stock. You can use it to determine the effect of different environmental factors, such as temperature, relative humidity on concrete carbon uptake. You can use it to ascertain the impact of concrete properties, such as the water to cement ratio, the mix ratio on carbonation. And lastly, to estimate and optimize the carbon cycle without undergoing time-consuming and labor-intensive experiments. Why the differences between carbonation in service life and after service life, because I mentioned earlier on that carbonation takes place during the concrete service life. That's when the concrete is being used in its normal life and after it is being demolished. So what are the differences in parameter? There are just three basically, which is the exposed area, because when you break the concrete, it has a larger surface area. Then exposed CO2 concentration, and number three, increased porosity, which is caused by demolition and handling. Mathematical model in carbonation can be classified into four, which we have the empirical, the kinetic, the thermodynamic, and the numerical models. These are the parameters that are used in creating carbonation models for concretes. And the one by the left-hand side are the basic parameters that you need in creating mathematical model for carbonation, while the right-hand side are secondary. So it depends on the purpose of your model. You use any of them, which we have from CO2 concentration to temperature, the concrete curing, and degree of carbonation. Empirical models. This first figure shows a highlight of how the model looks like. Is just a brief explanation. But the advantages of empirical model is it's simple and you can easily obtain results using empirical models. Then its disadvantage is it does not determine the determining factors in the model are not obtainable. Then the software is used. Any data processing fitting tools can be used for creating empirical models. For the kinetic models, its advantages are you can analyze the whole carbonation process, and the disadvantage is that too many specific assumptions are needed in creating this model. And you can use software such as MATLAB PDA and Parallel Direct for creating kinetic models. The thermodynamic model has to do with phase assemblage of carbonated products. So the way you get to determine the carbonation in using this model is through calculating the phase assemblage of carbonation product. So one of the advantage is considered a variety of products, and its disadvantage is that it produces only the final state, which is the final phase of the carbonation product. Then some of the softwares you can use are GEMS, Selector, Shares, and Equi36. For the numerical model, this is the most real, this is the closest to the to real carbonation process, and it has a very high prediction accuracy. However, it is difficult to solve and it requires a huge amount of data. And some example of the softwares you can use in creating numerical models are Abacus, Cosmo, PyTorch, and TensorFlow. Numerical model is very, very advanced, and you can use it to determine different parameters in carbonation of concrete. Some of the challenges and obstacles of using mathematical model for determining carbonation in concrete. Number one, using accelerated carbonation data in model creation reduces
1 minute more.
Reduces
Just 1 minute.
accuracy in determining natural carbonation. Assumption in creating models affects models' predictability, efficiency, and in the models, there are no variations in relative humidity, porosity, and temperature, which plays a very substantial role in concrete carbonation. What are future perspective? More realistic simulation of the changing environment and changes in concrete intrinsic characteristics during carbonation. We are also anticipating enhanced relationship between accelerated and natural carbonation. And lastly, reduction in the shortfall caused by models assumption. Conclusion. Despite the numerous sources and the limitations of the mathematical modeling of concrete carbonation, many prospects still exist for using this concrete mathematical carbonation model. And it is anticipated that these models will help governments, construction regulatory body, and construction companies to make decisions that will lead to the attainment of Paris Agreement. These are my references. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Please, if you have any question or clarification for Mr. ANSHK, please post it on the chat box. So the next presenter is Mr. Lekon Ujo. Mr. Lekon, can you please share your screen? Time starts now, sir.
Hello. Can you hear me, please? All right.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Lekon Damilola. This afternoon, I'll be presenting a paper titled Determinant of Top Management Support for Adopting Digital Technologies. This is just a preliminary investigation for now. So this is the outline for my presentation. I will look at the introduction, the research methodology, result and discussion, conclusion and recommendation. So the construction industry is very crucial in the execution of building projects, infrastructural projects such as railway and road, bridges, and development of the nations, of different nations. And in recent decades, the competitiveness and survival of any construction companies or construction sector as a whole depend on the readiness to adopt and embrace digital technologies, technological changes, and various innovations that we have. It will surprise you that construction industry is one of the most backward sector in adopting digital technology, especially in developing countries. And to make the matter worse, construction professionals also have reluctance or resistance to change when it comes to embracing digital technology or other innovation. Of all these construction professionals who are even resistant to adopting digital technology, the top management officers, the MDs, may probably express more inertia to change because of their age and insufficient technical know-how on the use of digital technology. And we know that we need this top management support for any company organization to transform from the traditional method to digital method. So therefore, this study aims at investigating the determinants of top management support in adopting digital technology in the construction industry. So we have two objectives for this study. The first one is to identify the determinants of top management support, and secondly is to develop the relationship between these determinants and the top management support itself. So during the literature review, we were able to identify 5 determinants, which are intention, passive benefit, trust, absorptive capacity, technical competence. So we have a hypothetical relationship that we use to link the determinants here to the top management support. So to the research methodology, we use online questionnaire survey to obtain data for this particular study. And this survey contains 3 sections. The first one is the personal information, such as the work experience, professional background, the company type. The second one is background information, where we explore the kind of digital technology that are used, when are they used on the project. And the final section, which is the main determinants, we try to ask questions about the intention, passive benefit, the trust, absorptive capacity, technical competence, and even the technical top management support, so that we can easily check the relationship between the dependent and independent variables. And this way, used from validated sources. These items, they are from validated sources that have been used in past studies. And this, for the sampling of this study, we just use random sampling to get the opinion of 38 construction companies about top management support. And we use multiple regression analysis to check the relationship between the determinants and the top management supports. So here is the background information for the personal information rather. We have the work experience of the people, the professionals that responded in each field. And majority of the professional quantity surveyors. And the company type, we have many of them in contracting firm. We have few of them also, a few of them in consulting firm and the likes. Now, the respondents were mostly engaged in building works and some also in civil works. The digital technology someone used are BRM, the drones, virtual realities, cloud computing, and the likes. And they use them for facility management, supply chain management, energy conservation and monitoring. And they use them at different stages of the project, such as the pre-construction stage, construction stage, and post-construction stages. So here is the final result of our multiple stepwise regression analysis. We found out that these are the 2 determinants, key significant determinants of top management support. The first one is technical competence and the passive benefits. They are the 2 top or significant determinants of top management support. So here now we deduce that the technical competence of the staff, which are possibly the junior staff, and the passive benefits which is possibly from the middle or senior construction professional who are also decision-making members of that organization are essential for this to enhance top management support in any construction organization. So let's look at this field. Any company that has technical skilled employees or they have technological structures, it's possible for that organization to convince the top management to embrace digital technologies for the day-to-day activities of that particular organization. And looking at the passive benefits also, when the organizations want to get competitive advantage over others, and they want to have possibly better supply chain in their day-to-day activities, it's also helped them to convince the top management officers of that organization very well. So let's look at the few conclusions we have. Now, conclusively in this study, I told you that it's just a preliminary investigation for now at the moment. So, and we have been able to achieve the aim of our study. So we recommend that for organization to have enhance top management support in an organization, participative management approach in which all arm of this firm coming together to look at how they can push forward the frontier of knowledge and advancing the objective of the organization. This participative approach is essential for every organization. So looking at this study, you may wonder that, oh, we have 38 responses. How is this one? How is this study valid to obtain the
1 minute, Mr. Liko.
Thank you.
Please.
To obtain the aim of this study. These 38 responses is beyond the minimum central limit, which is often 30. When we get 30 questionnaire survey for a particular study, it is valid to make a conclusion, at least preliminary conclusion for that particular study. All right, I will try to pause here. Thank you so much for your presentation. These are a few of the references that I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. So the next presenter is we'll be having Mr. Temitope Koinde. Mr. Temitope, can you please share your screen? Start. Is Mr. Temitope around? Okay. I think we move to the next presenter. Mr. Ridwan Taiwo. Mr. Ridwan, okay, thank you very much. You can share your screen and start.
Okay. Sorry.
Any difficulty?
Yeah, sorry, I want to share my screen.
Yeah, I think you are allowed to do that.
Share. Oh.
Or what's this challenge? Maybe we can help.
Yeah, the challenge is I can't actually see my PowerPoint on the tab I can share.
Oh. I think you just need to open your PowerPoint, open it down and just go to share screen or you, okay.
Okay, maybe I can do it from this way.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? Sorry,
can you see it, but not the PowerPoint. You can't see the PowerPoint.
Can you try resharing? Just try to reshare, but this time use try to reshare.
Okay.
Stop sharing and try again.
Can you see the PowerPoint now?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Good day, everyone. My name is Ridwan Taiwo, and I'll be giving a presentation titled Assessing Productivity in Modular Integrated Construction Projects, an integrated approach of simulation and regression analysis. And this will be the outline of my presentation from introduction to conclusion. Now to the introduction. Human beings need house to survive, but unfortunately, there are housing deficits around the globe. Specifically in the US, there are about 3.8 million housing deficits. And specifically as well in the UK, there are about 340,000 housing deficits. Now in Hong Kong, in 2021, the housing deficit increased by 28%. All the statistics are showing that housing deficit is an issue that needs to be mitigated. So because of this, the researchers have proposed modular integrated construction as an alternative to mitigate the traditional construction process. And this chart is showing the advantage of modular integrated construction over traditional construction process. As we can see that site development and prefabrication of modules can be done simultaneously, thereby saving huge amounts of time. And also the modules are more reliable compared to the traditional construction process. So we have some researchers that have done some kind of literature based on the MIC productivity in the prefabrication stage, and we have very few of them that have done some literature for MIC installation productivity. So this table is showing the summary of the literature and specifically showing the methodology, the simulation type, the crane type, the building category, and as well the output of the model, that is how many modules can be installed per day. So based on the literature review, there are some research gaps that we identified. The first one is that the very few studies address detailed movements of the crane on the construction site. As well, there is lack of studies addressing subjective factors that actually influence the productivity of MIC installation process. As well, in the literature, there is no mathematical model to estimate MIC productivity. I mean, MIC installation productivity. So based on this research gap, we formulated 3 objectives. The first one is to develop a discrete event simulation model that can predict the productivity of MIC installation process, and as well to validate the model by applying it to a real-life case study, and as well to present researchers and practitioners with a mathematical model they can use to predict the MIC installation productivity. So this chart is showing the framework adopted in our research. After the topic was validated, a detailed literature review was done, and then the data was collected from case studies and online materials. So this data was used to develop a discrete event simulation model in analogic environment. And after that, the model was verified and validated. So when we are sure that our model has been validated, then we generate some data from the DSS model to develop regression model in many type environments. And as well, the regression model was verified and validated. These tables here are showing the data collection. As we know, the construction activities are related to uncertainties. So we model the time, the duration as a triangular distribution to cater for this uncertainty. As well, this table here is showing the resources, and they are quantified in terms of HKD, that is Hong Kong dollar. So this is a schematic representation of the discrete event simulation model. And it starts by the arrival of the truck on the site. And then the truck is going to maneuver its way to where the modules will be unwrapped until we'll finally get to whereby the module will be fireproofed. But specifically, one contribution of this DS model is that it includes job and management conditions. That is, it models the real life situation. For instance, there might be poor weather conditions, there might be rainfall, all these categories, all these factors are catered for in this model, which was not done previously in the literature. And as well, there is a possibility of rework. If there is a rework, then it will be like a reduction factor, which will simulate the real life process of MIC installation process. So this is showing the analogic environment, and specifically our model was applied to a real life case study in Hong Kong, which encompasses 35-story building, and each floor accommodates 15 modules. This is showing a typical modular unit. Now, after the model was developed, sensitivity analysis was done. This sensitivity analysis is to know the critical factors that affect the model and to know the less critical one. So based on these scenarios, scenario 6 was the best one, as 13 modules can be installed per day at a minimum of 40 days for the 35-story buildings and with 1.3 million HKD. So this scenario is best because it has the lowest minimum resources. And as I said earlier, sensitivity analysis was used to verify our model that is working right, and also we confirm the model assumption. Based on the validation of our model, we compare it with previous study. This study shows that 16 modules can be installed per day but these studies do not incorporate pragmatic factors that could model the real life situation of what is going on in MIC installation. So our study is validated by this study by saying we have 13 modules per day that can be installed. So after the DS model was developed, we run it 300 times to generate a data. So this data was used to develop the regression model in Minitab, and this is the regression model that we developed. Also, we verified the model using ANOVA and R-square, and our ANOVA tells us that some of these resources are not really critical. So we modified the regression model, and then we come up with this particular model such that construction practitioners can use this model to predict the MIC installation productivity. And in relation to the validation of our model, so we actually look at what is the MAP, that is mean absolute percentage error of what our model can predict. And we have an average of 8.93%, which is less than 10%. That means our model has the ability to have more than 90% accuracy, which is deemed satisfactory. So in terms of conclusion, it can be concluded that 13 modules could be installed per day for high-rise buildings. And also, in terms of our contribution, we've contributed by developing a DAS and a mathematical model that construction practitioners can use to forecast the productivity of MIC installation. And regarding the limitation, this study is only concerned with productivity of MIC on site, and then we do not deal with the productivity of prefabrication in the manufacturing companies. So these are the references we use for the study, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and taking to the time. So we'll be having our guest speaker now. Yes, I don't think Mr. Timotoko is still on. So our guest speaker, Dr. Kende, yes, you can proceed now.
Thank you so much, my chairman. Yeah, I would share my screen now. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to share my research. Actually, the topic is on machine learning for complex engineering problems. It's a very complicated research, but in a way, I would try to brush through the slides. And when you have questions, you can let me know, and I'll be happy to go deeper. So starting with like the current scenario is we are having like more increasing complexity of engineering problems. And I would like to mention here that in engineering, we see problems in everything, and we always seek to improve things. So because of that, like sophisticated tools like FEA and CFDA have been developed. And then one thing that we would observe now is that we have more data, and then because we have more data, more challenging problems, the complexities actually increases. So we have resorted to use other things to solve them. But before that, we need to understand the common characteristics of the problems that might arise. So it could be because of high dimensionality, multimodality, or the lack of data. So machine learning, which is a subset of AI in general, has always been used for all these problems. So to limit the scope to surrogate model methods, which are like methods more focused on problems whereby we have difficulties in obtaining data. So a very good example is using kriging. So in kriging, it's a stochastic process, and we can use kriging to work with very complicated problems. On this particular slide, what I would like us to take home from it is that kriging has two components, the global and the stochastic term, and we can fit in any data to it. But the challenges with kriging has always been that the issue of cost of dimensionality, sample selection, and then kernel selection. So to limit the things we will talk today, so I'm going to limit it to kernel selection in the machine learning models for complex problems. So in engineering and also in kriging, basically 4 kernels are used to tackle problems. So these 4 kernels
actually have the same mother kernel, which is the Matan kernel. So they are like they are just like a very specific set of the Matan kernel, whereby with different new parameter you have the different kernels. So the Gaussian kernel is very used. So the issue has always been when you have different problem sets, the kernel that fits that problem actually differs. And many users of machine learning actually just either use maybe cross-validation to guess the kernel, or just select kernels that they feel would be useful. So in this chart, we can see that on the left-hand side that the kernel selection actually varies with even the sample sizes for specific problems. Then also when you have different problems, you can have some kernel performing better and some performing worse, but most times people don't understand why. So multiple kernel methods are actually being used to circumvent these processes, but usually it's more time consuming and we don't really understand whether it's going to actually be good or not. So one of the things that I started doing has been to ask questions and try to answer them. One of which is to see if we use different kernels for different problem dimensions, if it's going to be any beneficial. So I started my research in mixed kernel learning methods, where I implemented this by making some modifications. So while at it, I also made like several modifications to even the composite kernel learning methods. I'm happy to explain in details if you have questions on this. So I did that and then tried to do some benchmarking process with aerospace data, basically the lift coefficient, drag coefficient, and the pressure coefficient data of an aerospace model. So we observed that when you use multiple kernel learning methods, even the one proposed, like you have very good modeling capabilities, and then when you use different kernels for different problem dimensions, you can have a noticeable improvement. You can see for the pressure coefficient, for example, the mixed kernel learning method actually has a much better results. So even though we see that multiple kernel learning methods can be used to automate kernel selections, the issue has always been that we don't really understand why, and then it's very important to look deeply into the case. So I started looking at the likelihood profiles. So looking at a very simple engineering problem, like the cantilever beam problem. So I looked at the performance of the different kernels used in the hyperparameter space. So looking at this, it's easier to for the problem to converge easily at the global optimal. Happy to explain what global optimal and local optimal means if you have questions on this. But for a more complicated problem, we can see that the Matan 3/2 and the exponential kernel tends to have like a relatively simple profile, but the Gaussian and the Matan 5/2 tend to have like a very complicated profile, where the starting point becomes a very important choice. So I propose two methods. One is to actually add the new parameter for the general kernel into the optimization process. And the second method is to actually decide kernel selection during model training. So using this, we were able to see like a noticeable improvement in the kernel selections and in our model generally, and we were able to automate kernel selections in different engineering problems. So one thing is, after we're able to do this, but we still have some like gray areas that we would be really good to look at. For example, the second problem, we observed that it's a multimodal problem and the kernels were like differently. So we started looking at the relationship between multimodality, which is a big characteristics between very complicated and complex engineering problem and kernel selections. So for this, I used four different problem sets ranging from unimodal, which is the ellipsoid problem, and the and other three well-known multimodal problems to see this. And then for this particular case, I used both the single the normal Kriging model and the reduced model for different kernels. And we can see from this chart that all the kernels tend to have like a very good modeling ability, because for this particular
benchmark. 0.95 is the base, and they are all good. But something interesting happens when we try to see a more multimodal problem, which is the gradient function. So we can see that the exponential and the Malan-2 are good with the normal Korean methods, but when it comes to the reduced method, it doesn't really matter much. They all perform really well. But when you have like a more multimodal problem, like the Dixon price, we see that the exponential kernel tends to have like a more better modeling capability. So not to waste much of our time and then give more grounds for questioning. To summarize, like when it comes to machine learning, it's very important that you use a suitable kernel. And when it's not known, it's okay to use multiple kernel learning methods like the ensemble methods or the composite kernel learning methods. And when you have better models like the multiple kernel learning methods like MITL, you can also use it, and it will definitely improve model performance. And another thing that I would like to make mention of based on my experience with this particular research is that the starting point in hyperparameter optimization is actually a major challenge. And this only applies to the Gaussian and the Math-5/2 kernels. And another thing is to say that the techniques that are proposed can actually be used to avoid poorly performing kernels. And lastly, multimodality, which is the characteristics of complex problem, can affect the choice of kernels. Secondly, lastly, I would recommend the exponential and the Math-3/2 kernel for very complex problems, such as multimodal problems. So I think this is it. So if you have questions, please let me know. I prepared so much in the appendix. So I think I kept the time, which is something that I try to do as always. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I believe that some people definitely we have questions for you. If not now, maybe each one-on-one. Now we are in Q&A sessions, and I think we only have one question so far here. And please, if you have any question for one of the presenters, you can share it during this period. So, Mr. Ridwan, there's one question for you. Mr. Ridwan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you see the question?
Yes, I can see the.
Yes. Do the system models you compared your work with also have regression model? If yes, if you simulate that their model with same data you use, can you please do within 1 minute? So
okay,
if you can answer it, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah, actually, the 16 modules that we compared our results with, it's been done using discrete event simulation, not regression model. So the reason why we do the comparison is because we also did discrete event simulation, and we have almost the same data, I mean, as an input for the model. So the only thing that differs is that they do not consider pragmatic factors that can affect MIC installation process, such as the weather conditions, the management conditions, the conditions of the workers on site, and so on. So that's the reason why we could compare our own model that gives us 13 modules per day with theirs. So they did not do anything relating to regression model. So our objective is to further advance the what's it called, the state of the art by developing some regression model based on the data we generate using the GES. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And please, Mr. Ridwan Salahuddin, the person that asked the questions, if you still have maybe further, you need further clarifications or explanation, you can contact Mr. Taiwo Ridwan. It's available. Yeah, we have one question for the guest speaker. So is that, please, Dr. Kenny, can you give an example of multimodal problem? Just an example of multimodal problem.
Okay, yes. So I think multimodal problem, there are so many examples. So it's very cumbersome in transportation data sets and then other engineering data sets, because in this data sets you have like so many optimals. So any particular data whereby you have very common optimals is an example of a multimodal problem.
Okay. Yeah, and now I have one question for you, sir, Mr. Kenny. You know,
okay,
like from your presentation, I can see that you propose a method to solve complex engineering problem. Like maybe some of us or any of the listeners now that are working on maybe what kind of like complex engineering problem that we may be working on that we can maybe adopt this kind of your method to solve it. Maybe we can just use your methodology approach and to introduce innovations into our own problem. So so my question is, just give us an example of some complex engineering problem that we can apply your proposed method here to solve real problems that other researchers may be working on.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So this presentation is actually a very small subset of what complex problems are. So that's why I gave like a very big explanation about the characteristics of complex problems. So one example of things that you can use is whenever you have a problem that is nonlinear, which many problems are, then you can subscribe to my methods. Then also the methods I actually proposed were methods that are best suited for multimodal problems, whereby you have a data that has too many global and then local optimals. So you actually don't want to have issues with your kernel selections in such problems.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think by this time we've come to the end of the presentations. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, the moderator.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, guest speaker, Dr. Oye. I trust that everyone has been able to pick one or two things that are insightful, or at least inspiring to, explore, even if not in a full-blown research, but at least to just explore, to broaden our understanding of what's happening in the researcher space. So without further ado, I will like to invite our second keynote speaker. But before I go into that, please let's all try to fill the feedback forms. The links have been dropped in the chat box. So please, session chairs, could we just at least one more time share the links to the feedback form so that whoever hasn't done that so far will fill them, because it's actually a very integral part of this forum. It's something we want to incorporate into this. So we're going to analyze later and then have feedback sent to all the presenters. Thank you, everyone. So on to Dr. Ogechukwu Eze, who is our second keynote speaker. She is an interdisciplinary researcher in the convergence of engineering, microbiology, and policy management. Her expertise spans a wide range of research areas, including polymer materials, antimicrobial system design, antimicrobial resistance, infection control, and policy interventions. She earned a PhD degree in environmental science, policy and management at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. During her PhD, she successfully designed multi-level antimicrobial coatings active against a broad spectrum of microorganisms, including influenza, a virus, and human coronavirus. Our designed coatings have been deployed for surface disinfection in some hospitals and elderly care facilities in Hong Kong. Dr. Eze holds a bachelor's degree in polymer engineering and a master's degree in polymer science and engineering, both from the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Nigeria. She was also a lecturer with the Department of Polymer and Textile Engineering at FUTO. So with a rousing applause, maybe in the chat box, let's invite our second keynote speaker, Dr. Ogechukwu Eze. You have the floor, ma.
Thank you so much, Ikolua. I will want to share my screen.
Please go ahead. You can share screen actually.
So thank you so much, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. The way I planned joining the forum, I had wanted to listen to our patron, Professor Marawa's keynote speech, and then some presentation and boot out, and then come back for my keynote speech. But I got stuck with the interesting presentations so far. So I know we are all tired, I wouldn't want to bore you with too much talk. I will just be as brief as possible, and I will only be sharing some of my experiences so far working in a collaborative research setting. Now, when Professor Mara was talking, one of the key points he elaborated on advancing the frontiers of research in this 21st century is collaboration. And there's hardly any scientific evidence that is not a product of research collaboration. When he talked about seeing a publication with 35 authors, I laughed because I've also seen publication with over 50 authors. So collaboration is a normal thing and is a good thing to advance research frontiers. Now, for me, working in a collaborative research setting has offered me numerous opportunities. I've had to have access to resources, to have access to data, to some analytical and statistical tools, to learn numerous new techniques, how to use some equipments. And even though now, because of the way we publish in my lab, I can say I don't have quite a lot, because in my lab, my supervisor tries to position for a patent first before we go into publication. So, but right now I have some underway. But when I compare my progress so far and what working in a collaborative research setting has afforded me compared to what is obtainable to our universities back at home, I can say there has been a huge leap. When I was doing my master's in Nigeria, it was a serious hurdle, having access to equipment, having access to even chemicals. But for some of us here, we have the funding, we have all the tools that we need to carry out our research. So I would encourage you to maximize every opportunity that you can get here. I'm not saying that you have to play the jack of all trades, but at least some of them that are relevant to your field, please do well to get all the knowledge, learn all the skills that will be helpful for you in the future. Now, for many researchers, collaboration has been quite rewarding, but for some, it has also been nothing short of frustrating because of the numerous challenges we face in a collaborative research setting. For some of us, we are engaged in a mentor-mentee kind of collaboration where your supervisor, who is your mentor, calls all the shots, provide the funding, even though you do the major work. And I'm sure we are capable of handling supervisory issues, but the only thing I can chip in is when it becomes too mentally exhausting, when it becomes too draining, know that you can always explore other options, know that you can always leave and find other opportunities. So I'll be speaking more on collaborations for people like us who are working in a large lab where you have to work in a joint project with your peers, with your colleagues. Now, this may be applicable for us in our current disposition, but I believe that as we climb the ladder as academic researchers, we might experience similar challenges, and some of these best practices I'm going to speak on might also come handy. So for me, most of the challenges I experienced were enshrouded in sociocultural differences, language problems, contrasting styles of work, differences in discipline. And for me, the way I was able to navigate that, it wasn't easy in the beginning of my PhD journey and along the way. But over time and currently now, the way I was able to navigate is to find people in my lab who are like-minded, people of the same reasoning, people with the same level of understanding. And in situations where it is necessary or it becomes pertinent that I have to work with some certain people, I activate my interpersonal skills. I have to be as diplomatic as possible and activate my conflict resolution button to navigate the numerous conflicts that may come while working with them. And it has been quite fun working with some of my colleagues from Europe, from Philippines, and some from Pakistan. But for locals here and mainlanders, it really can be tasking to work with them. So if in your lab you have people from diverse backgrounds, I think working with people from Europe can actually be better than working with locals here. And then in 2021, when I was preparing for my thesis defense, I kind of had a serious altercation with one of my colleagues, a local here. So my supervisor had tasked her to conduct some toxicity studies with my co-team. And then when I needed the data for my thesis presentation, she refused to share the data with me on the premises that I don't have a stake in the data. So when you look at the scenario, data and resource sharing can also be a huge problem that we encounter when we are working with others in a research. So how I was able to navigate that currently, aside my major work in my postdoctoral fellow, I have other joint projects with some other postdoctoral scholars in my group. So the way we do it, like one of the projects we are working on now to develop an biodegradable antimicrobial mask. So I produced the coating we are using, and the guy I'm working with brought the technology that we are using to produce the fiber. So both of us have our own personal data, and then we have a central data. We have a central database where we upload the results that are general, but for some data that are specific to our own knowledge, we keep it to ourselves. But from time to time, we'll meet, we'll sit down, we present and show the other person, this is what I've been able to do in my own scenario. The person shows me this is what he has been able to do. So in this way, you avoid cases whereby somebody would just prematurely publish results without your knowledge, or data hoarding, or where somebody hoard the data that you need for your research. So another thing is publication. That is also where you can have challenges. Publication in the terms of how to position maybe IPs or authorship position, who should be the major author, who should be co-author. So these are, most times we enter into collaboration without even knowing. Sometimes it may be that is how our lab is designed. We have to work with this person. But in cases where you don't have a formal agreement, you have a proper conversation, depending on who is the major stakeholder in the project, who should be the first author, who should be the co-author. So these things are relevant, and it's best to discuss them maybe in the beginning before you even work with somebody, or even along the way as you are collaborating, to have all these proper conversations to avoid some of these challenges. And then how do you position yourself for effective collaboration? When Professor Mara was talking he talked about visibility. So you have to be visible. Some school of thought had it this way, that visibility is a basic condition for being potentially interesting to other scientists. So, but you also have to be attractive in order to be actively sought out by others. So you have to be a resource that others can look like, that others can look for. And how do you do that? Most times, conference attendances, it's good to catch the fun, to explore the new city that we came to tick the bucket list. But also know that your primary assignment there is to meet potential partners, potential collaborators. I learned from my boss that he has numerous collaborators from Spain, and most of them were people he met during his PhD. So this is also an opportunity for you to build your network. And you also have to be open. Be open to share your research, be open to share your knowledge, and also be receptive in listening to what others have to do. I think these days, no research is going interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. There must be a discipline different from yours that you can apply your knowledge to. For me, my main background is polymer engineering, but coming here, I can pass off as a microbiologist, as an antimicrobial resistance expert, as an infectious diseases expert, because I can virtually do everything done in that field. I was trained. So you have to be open and look at it, this scenario. If people can share their thesis in 3 minutes, the 3 minutes thesis defense. Also, explore. I want to give you the elevator model. If you have to explain your research to somebody in the elevator, an interesting person, maybe a potential partner, a government agent whom you are interested in working with, and you are in the elevator with the person, and you have to step out in the next floor, you have less than 60 seconds. How do you explain your research to the person? Do you go singing technical jargons to the person? So you have to find a way to explain your research in such a way that people can understand without using too much technical jargons. Maybe in a technical setting where you have to do technical presentation, yes, it's okay to use all the technical jargons, but sometimes when you are looking to collaborate with people, it is best to capture their interest by hitting the point. This is what I'm doing. And like I've said before, this is an opportunity for you to build your network. There are the people you might work with in the future, might be the people you are meeting currently in your PhD journey. And then again, commitment and trust. Please, I know we have this culture of anyhowness in Nigeria. Please shelve that as you are working with people. If you want people to, after one work, to still want to work with you, commit to any project, any joint project, give it your all. The same way you allocate to your personal project. I'm not saying one should be, suffering in place of the other, but please.
Dr. Isaac, please, you have about a minute more. And then
yeah, I'm already rounding up.
Thank you.
And also another thing is learn to also acknowledge people. There are people that contribute sometimes majorly or minor to our work. Learn to acknowledge people. It also opens channels for them to want to collaborate with you. So I think, just like I said in the beginning, collaboration can be rewarding. It can also be frustrating. You only need to find what works for you and follow your path. Now this is my lab. This is not all of us. We are actually just like half of us here. I have quite a large lab. We have like 5 groups, and in each of the group we have different sub-teams, and we have people from different disciplines, and we have collaborations from local here, international government institutions. So feel free to check us out if you want to join us. I am not recommending anything that you are going to get, but just feel free to check it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Eze. I trust that we had a lot of insightful bits to pick from our presentation. So we have a few minutes for question and answer. So please, if you have a question, please quickly, either you drop in the chat box or you signify, and I will give you the floor to ask her verbally. So questions, please, quickly.
Please, I have a question, Dr. Eze. Thank you very much for that. Very insightful. I was actually looking forward to this. Now, my observation comes from the non-STEM. Now, I discovered that partnership in non-STEM studies are usually very, very scarce compared to the STEM fields. So what would you recommend? How do you think you can break the barrier? Because that's actually the truth. Apart from public health, like sociology, because most of the works, we don't have labs like you do. Now you can see 30, 40 persons in the picture. So most of the times in like sociology, maybe psychology too, they can have psychology lab. But sociology, because that's where I'm from. So I tried to trace my, how do I call it now? I discovered that we don't actually have that lab So collaboration is just like you meet somebody and then you begin to network, you know, etc. So how do you break the barrier? Thank you.
I think, like I said during my speech, you can always find a discipline where you can apply your knowledge. For example, I think in the way during the COVID-19, almost everybody from different disciplines were doing something relating to COVID-19. Now, talking about breaking the barrier, I don't think I have something tangible to share with you because I come from a STEM setting and it's easier to get somebody to collaborate with. But maybe you need to work more on your visibility and maybe you try to initiate the collaboration yourself by contacting people, telling people this is what you are doing. Like if you attend conferences or maybe presentations like this and you find work that are interesting to you, you can initiate the collaboration, tell people, okay, please, this is what I'm doing and this is how I think. I think it is better to position yourself how your work is going to be useful to the person's work and not how the person's work is going to be useful to yours. So if you can tell the person, oh, this is what I'm doing and this is what I think, how I think it will be useful if we could, to your own work, if we collaborate. I don't know if I answered your question.
Sir?
Sir, I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, yes, I think he has responded. I said thank you, yes. Okay, we have another question in the chat box. The question said, any advice on how best to deal with the locals in terms of collaborations? Most of them don't welcome collaboration.
I think the reason why many of them don't welcome collaborations in the first place, like I said, is language problem. Some of them are afraid of the kind of English you are going to speak to them. Yeah, sometimes I have to come down to their level, like even speak the way they have to speak, like how to, you know, they are so used to saying how to say. So sometimes I come to their level to, you know, relate with them. So by so doing, you are solving that complex problem of them running away from you because they feel like your English is so sophisticated for them to, you know, have something to do with you. And then sometimes I also try to approach them through, actually have some of them that are my good friends. Like in my lab, I have one of them that is my very good friend. We call ourselves baby this and that. We vibe on various levels. Sometimes I ask her whether she was a Nigerian in the past because of the way. So sometimes I try to go through her to get to others. I ask her some questions, say, I'm finding it difficult to, you know, do this with this person. How do I go about it? And she advises me. Sometimes she also finds a way to talk to the person, maybe not directly saying, essential this and that. So I think, yeah, it can be quite difficult to get into them. Coming down to their level can also be helpful. Some of them don't want to have anything to do with because of English. That is the most major problem,
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor. If you have, you can take maybe one more question and then we pass it on to the next presenter. Move on to the next session. It appears we don't have any other questions. So thank you, Doctor. Really appreciate your time and the really insightful discussion you presented. So without further ado, I will be handing over to the award committee panel chair in the person of Ms. Adedipe Demilade. So you have the floor. So we're going to be announcing the award recipients for the respective sessions. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go on.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, the presenters, the listeners, you know, the keynote speakers and all of us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your contributions, your suggestions, questions, recommendations, and all. To be candid, all the presenters did really well. I'm saying distinctions here, you know. And we really want to appreciate you for the hard work, considering the time, the time range from announcements to presentation and to the D-Day. Thank you very much. From the scores allocated here from the table of the award committee, which I'm speaking for, we have the top 3 candidates from the presenters, overall candidates, meaning that a combination of all of the sections, natural sciences, social sciences, and engineering. So thank you, Mr. Gbadamosi, Mr. Muhammad, Mr. Ridwan, Mr. Victor, Mr. Emmanuel, Ms. Bello, Mr. Bamidele, Mr. Sopuruchi, Mr. Lekon, Mr. Inyola, and Mr. Ridwan. So for the 3rd place, we have Mr. Sopuruchi C. Abo from Social Sciences. And the 2nd place, Mr. Bamidele Ola from Social Sciences. And the 1st place, Mr. Ojo Lekon from Engineering section. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the announcement. I really do hope that you understand that we appreciate everybody's efforts. I believe at some point, we saw some really interesting interaction between presenters. But I do hope that we understand that this is just to recognize and to encourage every presenter that has been participated in this session. So we are not going to take much of our time. We're almost done. We're almost at the end. We have just one more session to go. And that is in the person, and that we are going to invite the ANSHK secretary to take on the concluding remarks and to give us the final speech before we call it a day. So I invite Ms. Olutumlayo Peserin to take the stage. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so before we go to, as usual, we have to talk about our dues. Please pay your dues. Please pay your dues. And we have these items. We still have one UDI, and yes, so we still have these items, and yeah. So this has indeed been a rewarding session. As academics, scholars, and intellectuals, I believe we have all benefited from the many awesome presentations we had today. Regardless of the differences in fields and research areas, our presenters have been able to present their outstanding research in a manner that gives us all-round understanding. On this note, I would like to thank everyone that has made this research forum a success. I appreciate the patron of our association, Professor Marafa, who also doubles as a keynote speaker, for taking time from his busy schedule to grace these events. I would also like to appreciate Dr. Eze, our second keynote speaker, for our presentation. Also, I would like to appreciate the presenters for their research tenacity, the participants for giving us an audience, the school representatives for encouraging submissions, and the guest speakers for their contributions. Special thanks also goes to the research committee members for the planning, the meetings, the coordinations, and ensure the success of the program. I must also acknowledge the executive members for their unwavering support. Although we had quite a number of interesting and thought-provoking presentations, I would like to recap that of our guest speakers. Dr. Adeoti spoke on climate change is not just about the temperature, it is also a is something that has been happening since how many years ago? So yeah, so let us just play our part to protect our environment. Mr. Ayeni spoke on advancing research frontiers through open access publishing. I believe we have all been in a situation where a paper we desire to read needs subscription. I mean, I saw a Nature paper. The paper was on the dangers of I think no, the paper was on open access publishing or something like that. The need to make papers to be open access, but that particular paper we have to pay for it before we can read it. That's ironic, right? So we see that open access publishing is important in the advancement of research. Dr. Yetunde spoke on machine learning for complex engineering problems. Artificial intelligence is taking the world by storm and being applied to virtually every field of human endeavor. So we are encouraged to also keep up and improve ourselves daily. We are thankful for all the presentations and the abundance of knowledge that has been shared. There is such beauty to a multidisciplinary research forum like this. For instance, a STEM researcher learns from an arts non-STEM researcher and possibly gets salient ideas that inject novelty into their work. In other words, basic knowledge about another field helps us gain mastery of our own. We are delighted by the number of submissions we have this year, and we envisage more in forthcoming years. Despite all presenters having an enlightening presentation, we congratulate the recipients of the Outstanding Presenters Award for each session. We believe that increased knowledge sharing, collaborations, and groundbreaking research will be birthed as a result of this forum, especially towards the development and growth of our nation, Nigeria, and the world at large. Again, we say thank you for your participation. Keep winning, breaking ceilings, and working towards attaining the zenith. Thank you very much. Before we go, we would like to take a group photo, as usual. Please let us have our videos on so that we can, take a virtual group photo. More than half of us are still I'll start calling our names though. Taiwo Ridwan, Stanley Sanga, Ajibola Ogushola, Daniel Dio, Victor, Ruth, Ibrahim. Please let us have our videos on. Okay. Say cheese. All right. And with this, we come to the end of the 2022-2023 Research Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ibrahim, we see you.
We hear himself.
Okay, so there's a question about accessing the recordings. It will be the link to the recordings will be shared very soon. Mr. Phillips will let you know about it. Thank you very much.
All right. Oh yeah, I also want to comment that I really appreciate the effort of the organizers. It looks like a very vibrant research forum, and that's very impressive. And also, from my observation, I think I've seen a lot of Yorubas, and particularly, I'm just wondering what's pulling Yorubas to Hong Kong. Maybe I should come there.
Well, you can feel free
Okay.
to. But I think regarding the
Alright.
video, we're going to upload it on the YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, so we're going to
Okay.
download it and make sure it's uploaded to make it available later. Thank you for the time you spared. We are very,
No
very
problem.
grateful. We are very, very, very grateful.
Yeah, it's definitely midnight in Canada right now.
Yeah, it is morning now. It's like 5 a.m. now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So try and go back to sleep. If not, continue the day.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you for joining. I will I'll reach out to the executive committee later. I want to do some housekeeping over here. Thank you. Yeah, later, bye.
Bye.
Let me stop the recording.